I'm just shutting this down, getting this out of my way. We're ready to start.
Yeah.
Bam!
Bam.
That's how we start. Bam!
Bam is Emerald. If you were saying bang, that would be Diamond Dallas Page.
I'm not familiar with Diamond Dallas Page. Is that a wrestler? I assume?
Yes.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you would. We can talk about DDP another time.
Okay, all right, yes.
Welcome to the Unwritten Earth Symposium podcast, the podcast where I sit down with my good friend, Epadiah Ravishal, to talk about truly true role-playing games, design, play, practice, because we all need to practice, and so on.
And it's the podcast where I sit down with my good friend, Nathan Paoletta, for everything that you just said, and to answer... I was going to say answer questions from our fellow scholars. Yeah, they're questions. I was going to use the prompt word, which is short for prompt. Prompt is short for prompt. I was going to use the P word, which it used to be one of my favorite words, but in recent years has become one of my least favorite words, thanks to AI. Prompt engineer.
Gotcha.
That's a thing I would have called myself a couple decades ago, when I'm like, this is what I'm doing when I'm writing a role-playing game. Like I'm not the only thing I'm doing, but like, you know, a good 70% of what I'm writing is just prompts. And then now I'm like, I throw up a little bit when I say that. Like,
for a second, I thought that, and this leads into one of our topics here, I think. I thought that there was going to be something about, especially in the solo game world, where a lot of what you're doing is writing prompts. I mean, just as you say, you know, I mean, we're writing prompts all the time, but like solo games and solo journaling games in particular, like the system is often many, many prompts, right?
Yes. Well, I made a blusk about this, and I just want to like state it on the record, because basically I was in this blusk. I was responding to so you have people out there who are using AI to write their novels,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
And there are different levels to all that. I don't want to deal with nuance here, because anytime somebody's like, we should deal with the nuance when it comes to a topic like this, what they're actually saying is, let's go where we can move those goalposts. That's a thing that's very frustrating to me when they're like, there's nuance here. And it's like, there is, but it's unnecessary. We don't need to use the nuance. If you're using AI to write novels, I don't want to read it. I think you're doing a bad thing. Anyways, that's the angry Epi. The more magnanimous Epi, maybe is the word I'm looking for, wants these people to realize that their prompts, the things that they write for the AI to write the novel from, are valuable in and of themselves.
Right. That is where a creative act is happening.
Like, you can turn this into, like, you can't turn this into fabulous riches. I'm not trying to like appeal to people who are just overloading online bookstores. I say online, overloading Amazon with like a bunch of vibe-written novels, you know, multiple ones a day or whatever. What I'm trying to appeal to is people who are like, I have an idea, I want to get it out, I'm having trouble writing a whole novel, and AI here appeals to me because it will do the hard work. The thing I want to say is, like, perhaps the greatest writer to ever live, Jorge Luis Borges, addressed this, and he died decades before we have the current AI crisis. And he just said, like, I don't have the exact quote, you can look it up. The quote I know is a translation, so it's, you know, originally in Spanish. But he says, like, it's a laborious and impoverishing act to write an entire novel about something that you could just explain in like 5 minutes. He's like, he says, you know, he's lazy. And so what he does is he just writes, he imagines these books exist and write reviews of them. And that, like, that's exactly what you're doing. And like when I was a kid, we used to, you know, this is a podcast about playing pretend. So I think this is appropriate.
Yep.
We used to like pretend we were going to write novels, or we would pretend that we saw a movie that doesn't exist that none of our friends heard about. And then we tell them what the movie is, and everyone would sit and they would just eat it up. we plot out what these novels, these long series of novels would be about, and or comic books, or what have you. And it was just a thing we did. Like, we wandered around the forest just talking about these things. That was a joy. It was a great. Anyways, get back to all of this. Like you were saying with solo, like prompting, you could definitely do a lot with prompts in the role-playing world. You don't even have to come up with the game. Like, there are games out there that you could adapt it to and just put your prompts down and say, use these instead. That.
Well, like, we were just inside baseball, inside Scholar Ball.
Yeah.
That's the game we play. Scholar Ball.
Yeah.
We had a recent Playtest Tuesday where we were playing Asa's work in progress game. Scholar Asa, backwards tabletop is his company. Spine is the game that people would know right now. Speaking of solo games, where it's a book that you kind of interact with as you play. Anyway, Asa brought a super cool project to Playtest Tuesday that we played through a little bit of, and in spots it has directions for mechanics that do not exist,
right?
Filling, and that's exactly all it needs. So much as you might leave yourself a note like, you do all this stuff and then I don't know, resolution mechanic here, and then once you know what's going to happen, go on to the rest stuff, and you're like, I'll come back, I don't know, maybe it'll be a die pool, maybe I'll do a PBTA style move, maybe it'll just be a coin flip, whatever.
Right.
Ultimately it matters, but right now in this moment I just need to know there's a mechanic here, figure it out. In this game it's like, roll some dice, whatever you want, and decide how it goes, and then you move on with the game. And it's not a placeholder, that's the mechanic. Just make up a mechanic in the moment to fit into the spot where you feel like a role-playing game should have a mechanic. And that's great. I'm not quite sure what you said that led me down this path, but I wanted to highlight. Like that's a prompt.
You're prompting even the mechanics, right?
Like, yeah, that feeds back to the players and says, go off on a flight of fancy, but ultimately what the game cares about is you decide what happens. That's really what's happening there.
There was this thing that happened, this would be years ago now, but I was at a convention, I don't remember which one. I was running Vast and Starlit, probably at Games on Demand at this convention. And if you're uninitiated, Vast and Starlit is, I think, 250 words in total. Like, it's a tiny, tiny game. I wrote it to fit on a folded business card. So it's like, it would be on the front and back of a business card, except I needed a front cover and a back cover because I wanted to actually have business card material on it. Anyways, in Vast and Starlit, oh man, I can't believe I actually cannot remember exactly how it's all, but basically if you do something that might be considered difficult or dangerous, somebody else calls you out. They say that might be difficult, or that might be dangerous, or that might be both. You have to stop. And I think if it's difficult, you pick someone and you ask them what is needed before I can do it. And if it's dangerous, you ask them, like, what happens if I do it? Like, what are the consequences of doing this? And then there's a little bit else, like, again, it's only 250 words. It's weird that I'm going around this, but the point is, the vast majority of times, and the way I intended it when I designed it was, when it's difficult, somebody says, like, you're prisoners that broke out of a space prison and now you're on a spaceship that you found or whatever. And let's say there's like you're like, oh, I'm going to go repair the warp drive. And somebody says, that sounds difficult. And so I expect somebody to say, you're going to need a hydro spanner, because that's just a, techno word that, or something like that. And this may lead to you trying to find a hydro spanner, or you may be like, oh, that's fine, I got a hydro spanner. That's just part of the resolution mechanic. But one person said you need to flip heads twice in a row out of 5 times and handed them a coin or something like that. And everyone else at the table would look to me, because it's my game, I designed it and I was facilitating it. There's no GM in the game. But they're like, can you do that? Like, is that allowed? And I was like, well, first of all, it's not disallowed.
Right.
I didn't have enough words to say you can't, And second of all, I love it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, this is great. As long as you're not, like, starting to do creepy things with it. Like, you have to give me your phone number or something like that. Yeah. Don't do that. But if you're don't ever ask for a phone number. Why would you contact someone via phone? That's ridiculous. What year do we live in? But it was just a fun way a fun turn of how the rules worked, and made me reconceptualize that entire game. I definitely have notes somewhere where I thought about doing like the Vast and Starlit Omnibus Edition, which is like I want it to be like a 500-page book. I want it to be like gargantuan,
right?
With just the same rules, but like just expounding on it,
right.
Like different things you could do with it, and but I'm learning my lesson. Funny as that joke would be,
right?
That's more than just writing a prompt, which is what I did.
Yeah, so I guess we should get to these things that we're saying we're going to talk about. Just a quick production note. I am on a backup recording situation, so if I sound a little weird in this one, sorry, that's how it goes. If I sound better than usual in this one, I guess that'll teach me.
Mm-hmm. Let us know.
Yeah, let me know. Comment
below, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. That's right. Ring the bell. I don't know. We're on YouTube. You can ring a bell, I think, on YouTube. I think that joke itself is now dating us.
Yeah.
We have some prompts, questions here that I've kind of collected over time from our scholars in the Discord. I think some from the official mailroom and some from just kind of talking about some of our recent episodes.
Yeah.
I just, have them written down in a different document, so I don't remember. But we have a kind of cluster here, which we thought would be fun to talk about. So we have a question from Daka, who asks, what are some standards in Truly True RPGs? By standard, I mean something that is familiar to anyone who has experience with Truly True RPGs. For example, what rolling a 20 on a d20 means, etc. And then Bryant, friend of the show and an illustrator with new work in the upcoming Swords Without Master.
Good stuff. Changed how I wrote it.
See, prompts can be visual. They don't have to. Anyway.
Yes.
Asks, do you ever find the jargon of games or the niche topics of your games entering your everyday vernacular? Are there things in life that a study of games has made easier to understand or share? Which I feel like those are potentially divergent questions. However, to me, they're kind of resonant with Daka's question because, there's a subcultural identification thing, right? Of like, rolling a crit, natural 20, those kinds of things that are both jargon from game or games or a particular game entering the cultural vernacular. But the reason they do that is because they have this meaning from what they do in the game. And that is interesting to me because often I feel like those are the things where I'm like, I don't know if I need to broadcast like, oh yes, I am a nerd because I have a shirt with a D20 on it. There's other ways I'll broadcast that I'm a nerd with shirts with other things on them. But like that particular one isn't really like my aesthetic, I guess. But if I see that in the wild, I know, or at least I can make an educated guess as to like, oh, I bet I could talk to this person about a game with dragons in it.
When I was much younger, that was an important signifier for me. Like I literally bought a shirt out of Dragon magazine. The shirt had a scroll on the front. It didn't have like great art. It didn't like, it wasn't like, it was just a regular scroll that said, don't turn your back on a dragon. And then printed on the back were like claw marks. Okay. And that was, to me, at my age at the time, I needed that. I absolutely need. So I mail ordered it. I
had let's see, did I have two different ones? I definitely had the Vampire the Masquerade Ventru shirt. So they did like a set of shirts with like iconic art for different clans that were all the Tim Bradstreet art. So like, which is great. Like that's, great stuff. And this is the whole appeal of the, world of early mid 90s World of Darkness stuff where it's like the crossover with, goth counterculture kind of stuff. So even though it has Vampire the Masquerade in giant letters across the top, like if you don't know what that is, it kind of is just a gothy thing because it says vampire on it, right?
Right, yeah.
So it was in that zone of like plausible subcultural deniability. That's not what I'm trying to say. My point is, I had those shirts. So
yeah,
like none of us is like, I'm not judging anyone here.
Yeah, yeah. No, hell, I want to sell those shirts. Like if someone wants to buy. The point I think I was getting at was just that like I also did that with like I used to wear a lot of comic book shirts and I grew out of that. When I say grew out of that puts like a little value thing on it that I don't want to put on it. My tastes change.
Yeah. Yeah.
My taste in comics changed as well as like the actual shirts that I was going to wear or whatever. Mm-hmm. Same thing with band shirts. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the point is, maybe if there is any point, I think these signifiers are great for like letting people know. And they also let you know the depths to which you are in like, for instance, people will make PBTA references.
I know multiple people with PBTA move result tattoo.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Either like the dice showing like a 7 or like something like that. Success at a cost, right? That's the concept that people really end up getting tattooed on themselves.
Yeah. And this is dialing in, right? Like this, like I'm within this niche. I am in a niche within this larger niche. The question itself wasn't about these sort of cultural signifiers.
So like the question of like standards in terms of like, what can you reasonably expect someone who's going to encounter your game to know, right? That is something you can dial in as you, I think both as you like discover the game and then also as you discover new people discovering the game. Like those are two slightly different things. This is a thing that happens, I think, for a lot of people who do Powered by the Apocalypse games. There's a little bit of a hierarchy when you're doing a playtest or playing it or running a demo or just like talking about the game to someone where it's like, for example, with Worldwide Wrestling, if I have a table of people I haven't met before and I'm going to run a demo. All right, so here's the game. Quick little like, you're going to be wrestlers, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so this game is Powered by the Apocalypse. Depending on the context, does anyone here know what that means? Or does anyone here not know what that means? Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And, sometimes someone's like, yeah, I don't know what that is. And it's like, okay, cool. That just tells me that when I'm explaining the game, when I'm explaining, like, here's what you need to know for us to start playing, I need to start at a slightly higher level where I say, okay, your character has stats, has these things called moves, which are their special abilities that are kind of unique to that character. Each of you has a gimmick, which is an archetype, like coming from the idea of a playbook. So those are all going to be unique, et cetera, et cetera.
Rather than you just starting with, here are the moves that we use in this game.
Right, like, exactly. Yeah. So if everyone's like, yeah, we're all old heads. There are Apocalypse World old heads at this point. Okay, cool. So, here's the playbook. The gimmicks are the playbooks. So go ahead and take a look. You'll recognize all the stuff. And here are the things that are different, right? Instead of HX, there's heat. And that's actually that's very central in this game. Let me explain how it works. You get advances by going through this audience progression. So here's where that is on your sheet. Let me know if you have any questions about the moves. And instead of the idea of forward, you have momentum. So that's a currency you're going to build up and spend a lot more frequently than the like +1 forward kind of thing. And those are the highlights of the differences that I try to point out. Yeah. And then there's all right, has anyone here played this game before? Right. And that's the next dialing in of like, okay, cool. So, here's a new gimmick that you probably haven't seen, right? That's where you then focus the conversation. If it's everyone's there like, yeah, I played this game before.
Sanguine Games in their books, they often have like in the introduction, like if you've never played a role-playing game before, this. If you know what a role-playing game is, this. In their Apocalypse World inspired Usagi Yojimbo, they're like, if you've ever played a Powered by the Apocalypse, this. And it's the same thing, it's just written in text format. But I thought that was like a really good introduction, like your audience is going to be of these categories here. Right. And, like if you've played a video game before, this is how it's different from a video game. But like before, when I mentioned Vast and Starlit being only 250 words or whatever, that's not possible. Or at least I was like, that's not possible without you being in the culture and understanding some role playing standards,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like some very basic role playing standards that sometimes we don't even have words for, right? Like, what does it mean to play?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? These are the sort of questions that, like, when it's the what I can't think of the Supreme Court.
Like when you see it, like the
yeah. Like I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
It gets into that realm. But then I turned around and wrote "What is a role playing game," which uses the same rules to explain what all of it was.
Right. So there are two texts to refer to.
Yes. But the one of the things that kind of gets me about these things, there are like I think the example of like rolling a crit is definitely something. Roll for initiative is something that a lot of people, they're like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Like that's what that means.
Mm-hmm. I failed my perception check.
Yes, yeah,
right.
That's almost so many of these come from the big dog. They come from D&D. And then there's a bunch of them that come from D&D that kind of get into you in a way where you don't realize that D&D is its origin. You don't realize that, like, this is a thing that kind of shows up a lot in, I think, in a lot of more recent fantasy. D&D assumptions get baked into, well, first they get baked into video games, right? Because the early video games were inspired by it, and then those get baked into the via that and D&D and all the streamers just doing, all the huge streamers largely doing D&D. There's a feedback loop in that we don't need to get into right now. Never mind. So it then starts seeping into popular culture in such a way that it's like, oh yeah, this is what fantasy looks like, and it doesn't look that way to me. Like I'm like, this is clearly we were just talking about Paul Anderson.
Yes.
And it wasn't on a mic, but we were talking about there are two works of his, The Broken Sword and Three Hearts, Three Lions. I think that's what it's called.
I think so, yeah. Three Hearts and Three Lions. Yeah.
Three Hearts and Three Lions. Three Hearts and Three Lions in particular, when you read this, if you have experience with old school D&D, you're going to be like, oh, like this description of a troll, you're like, that's exactly I can see the illustration from the original AD&D monster manual exactly in this description. The healing factor that trolls have come from, like, D&D stole from a lot of fantasy. I mean,
it's it's an Appendix N thing, right? Where it's like, like, here are all the references that early D&D is pulling from, and like that's one of them. A Dying Earth, like there's really specific ones, right? Like Dying Earth with like ion stones, right? Like that.
Yeah, or what's the deal with rods? Why does D&D wands? I get magicians have wands, staves. Gandalf had a staff. That's fine, but why rods? And then you read Dying Earth and you're like, there's one rod in it. In that, it's Vance just being like, what's this weird object? I'm going to describe it as a rod because that is a general shape or whatever, and it does these weird things. And then you go back to your D&D and you look at all the rods and you're like, yeah, none of these make any sense except they're weird and fantastical. Well, I'm on a tangent. There's the baked in ones that you can't see because they're becoming culture, right? Like they're becoming the larger culture or whatever, I guess is what I was saying.
Yeah. So adjusting on the curve for like anyone who cares about this kind of stuff, right? You're not necessarily going to experience I rolled a critical out in the wild from someone who doesn't read fantasy and doesn't play,
right.
whose media diet is just not that stuff, right? But it's in enough stuff it might be a reference in a movie that the nerds will get, and other people might pick it up. Who knows? There's a couple different kinds of standards, right? Like, are we talking about standards in terms of, so far we've been talking about kind of like things that kind of bubble up and then become a signifier. So so it's like a standard reference, but there's also standards in terms of like building standards. Like, what do you need in order for this thing to be a X? And I'm not saying that we're going to define, here's what you need for this to be a truly true role-playing game, but I think the that those unspoken assumptions are kind of the standards, right? Like there are these things called characters. People are playing them. Often one person is playing one character, not always. What are we doing? We are talking.
Yeah. You got like GM role is just a standard.
I think we can kind of define standards by the things we have to define to make sure that they're not assumed, right? Like there's a GM and there's players, and those are two different things. So you have games where like, no, the GM is not a separate thing. That everyone's a player. Oh, okay, so that's a GM-less game or a GM full game. You know, like, so you have to define it specifically to get it away from that standard assumption. And similar to you play one character, or it's like, okay, you play a troop of characters. You can jump in and out of characters. That has to be defined away from you're a person with a character, right?
This kind of gets into another definition of standard, which I think is a fun one for game design, and that is a jazz standard, right? Like something that people do but play their own version of.
Yeah.
To some extent, that's what we're doing in role-playing games, right? Like somebody has written down the notes and we're off playing it our own way. There are many of ways. There's a lot of nuance about how that isn't exactly what we're doing, but there's, you know, the parallels here are kind of nice. But I think thinking about it design-wise is also very interesting.
What is your D&D, right? Like when you're like, what is your version of a game that is a D&D? That's kind of riffing on a standard.
We've been talking a lot about Powered by the Apocalypse, but like I feel like Powered by the Apocalypse very much had like a jazz standard feel to it. People did really interesting things. They're still doing it. I'm not. We're not here to bury Apocalypse World.
Yeah.
But people are doing really interesting things with it by taking like the ideas in it and often going incredibly far. Like just look at some of the things that the Bakers have done that they consider Powered by the Apocalypse that go so far afield. You're not rolling two dice. I dig that. Like I think is a really fun thing. And I not to like discount, like, because we had the first kind of wave of this, second kind of wave of it. I think the first wave was the initial wave when D&D broke out and everyone was like, oh, we could do this thing that is a role-playing game. And so you get like a bunch of other games.
Right.
Like, I don't know if Bunnies and Bros was like the third one, but like it's really early on where we're like, what if we did Watership Down?
You get the Dallas role-playing game. You get the Rocky and Bullwinkle, etc. Sorry, Bullwinkle.
And then
Rocky.
Yeah. And then in the aughts, you get third edition and the D20. And like those that had lived through that, like I'm trying to think of like the best not dismissive way to describe it. It was a glut. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's maybe a bad thing. You would walk into Gen Con and you would go through the dealer hall and there would be like some store there with just like a giant bin. They're like 5 books for $10.
Right.
And they're just all D20 things that had just been published like 3 years earlier. Oversaturated market and all that. That doesn't mean that this was bad. Economically, it probably did for the it certainly did for like the people that bought those books to sell them, and probably the people that published them. I don't want to get into that history of it, but as a creative output, we're making things that's fun, and a lot of people are doing a lot of interesting things in those D20 days. I have personal preferences. I expressed these to the Bakers. I was like, I wish Powered by the Apocalypse existed in the odds. I think we'd be in a better spot if that was the one. But that's fine. Like, that's a personal.
Yeah.
But anyways, thinking about that stuff as like something along the lines of a jazz standard, right? Like, you're like, hey, here's a game. Here are a bunch of notes in a particular order with a certain rhythm that I can riff on. I can change, but everybody knows what I'm doing. Right? Like, you all get it, right? Like,
yeah, because the metaphor here also includes, like, the audience recognizes what you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Maybe to a greater or lesser degree, depending on how, like, plugged in they are to the nuances of like jazz, right? But like, you know, at a certain point during the riffing, you go like, oh, this is was it Giant Steps, right? Like this is you know classic, you know, of the genre that a million people have done in a million different ways. Oh, this is how you're doing it. And maybe where the metaphor breaks down a little bit is like, hopefully in a productive way, is that the audience for the riff is engaged with what are you doing differently? I'm excited to see where this goes. As opposed to, oh, I already know what this is. I'm going to move on to the next thing. You know, I'm going to change the track, or I'm going to go to a different, you know, bar or like whatever. Which, you know, I'm sure people also do like, oh, I can't listen to another Giant Steps. But there's something I think, in game, and it's a different creative engagement, so they don't have to be the same. But like, there is a little something of like, can you telegraph that you're riffing? You know, can you telegraph that you're doing it, working in a mode, in an established mode, so that the people who are excited about that can engage with it, and the people who are looking for novelty or looking for the thing they know they like, right? Neither of those are necessarily satisfied by the riffing. There's something, I don't have a conclusion here. I'm just kind of like going down this road.
Like just saying like the phrase "powered by the apocalypse" is, you know, but there's also like, you know, I'm discounting, like there's like all of the OSR, they're doing the same thing, right? Like they're.
Well, I'm thinking like even at like a higher level, you know, what's your riff on, or what's your version of the GM-less game? What's your version of the adventure game? What's your version of? I'm not just thinking of genre. There's something structural, right? What's your version of the satisfying one shot? You know.
Yeah, this is where the metaphor just utterly breaks down, because like we could get into like a big discussion about like what is GM versus GM-less? Is that like with or without saxophone? Like what are we talking about?
Like, what are we doing here? Yeah.
And that's fine. Like we can abandon this but I like the idea of a standard as something that people recognize that you can then riff on, whether that standard is like a game system. Another thing that people do all the time is just Star Wars. Like,
here's my Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off.
And we'd see mashups of music all the time, which is the same thing of being like, what if we did Star Wars in, you know, Worldwide Wrestling? Like, what would that look like? And it would be what they were playing in the Millennium Falcon. When you had to let the Wookiee win.
I feel like this leads to, I was saying before we started recording that we should start coming back to talking about surfaces, because that's like a thing that we're both just doing now, but is probably still worth talking about. And I feel like that's a working in a mode, addressing a standard is a surface, is a design surface, right? Which I think is easiest to see with system. You're like, okay, if you're designing a Powered by the Apocalypse game, that's the surface you're on, right? You with all the things that come with that. But there's something to like, if you either have the project of or come to the realization of, oh, I'm making a Star Wars game. You know, this is my Star Wars game. Now that's an additional surface for you to include in your approach.
Yeah, I really like the term surface as just like a way of like abstracting out a little bit. So let's see if we can bring this back to Bryant.
Yes.
Question, which I'll just restate for both us and the audience. Do you ever find the jargon of games or the niche topics of your games entering your everyday vernacular? Are there things in life that a study of games has made easier to understand or share? And like the first answer, yes. I recently, I think we talked about this. I don't remember if we talked about it on a mic. In one of my programming clubs, we were looking at the book. It's not a programming book. It's a design book. The Design of Everyday Things.
Oh, sure.
We talked about. Yeah. And there's it talks about affordances and constraints in there. And that has been part of my vocabulary since just the aughts, like when I engaged with people talking about role-playing games online. I engaged with people talking about role-playing games online since there wasn't online. I mean, like, I did it since you dialed up to somebody else's computer, but I mean specifically like the Forge era stuff, and it was just a very convenient way to say, here's the things that the game allows you to do, and here are the things that the game prevents you from doing. It's not the same thing as the things the game tells you to do. Those are separate concepts, and that's been incredibly helpful to me for thinking about games. Like, because when I realized that like, the gap between the affordance and what you tell them to do allows for play, not play as in playing at the table, but play as in like, there's a little play in this screw.
Something moving back and forth.
Yeah. But both words work well together. Anyways, that's super important to me and how I think about games. And then that gets into how I think about so many other things, including programming quite a bit. Like, like I have preferences about programming languages because of the affordances and constraints that they offer.
Right.
And programmers will be like, well, they're all Turing complete. They can all do the same thing. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Just because they can doesn't mean that they that they should, that they will.
The redstone circuits you can make in Minecraft are Turing complete, but you're not going to program a web server with it. I bet somebody has, but you're not going to, and that's the important bit. But it's interesting because this is the inverse happening, right? That book, The Design of Everyday Things, is not about role-playing games. It's not about programming. It's about teapots and doors.
Yeah, it's kind of a circular thing sometimes, right? It's like you learn something in one context, and then it turns out it came from somewhere else.
Yes.
Like, I think there's a lot of like improv stuff that's like that, where, LARP and improv's heavy improvisational play uses lots of techniques from improv, the activity, with all the things that have grown up around that. And sometimes, like, there's certainly things that I first heard of in the context of, like, when you're playing a game, do this with your character, that originated in an improv game, that a group plays to warm up before they go out on stage. Yeah, yes.
Right,
like,
yeah.
So there's that kind of circular thing can happen there too. I'm thinking about it because I'm like, I'm not sure. And this is one of those things where you have to start like listening to yourself all the time, which, we're all really good at, I'm sure. Like, I'm not sure how much like jargon of like general game stuff is in my everyday, but niche stuff from specific games, certainly.
Yes.
There's a lot of wrestling stuff that is in my vocabulary that, I try to kind of keep on the DL when I'm around people that I'm like, they're not going to know what this is. I can't think of a good example now, but like describing something as like, that's a total kayfabe thing. We're all pretending that it's working one way, and everyone doing it is pretending that it's working that way, but we all know it's not actually working that way. And it's not like 100% what wrestling kayfabe is, but like that concept is one, and it's disseminated a lot more in our current era. It's certainly a thing, and like, believe me, I do not need to see another like politics is wrestling now take. It's we get it. We can move on to something more productive to talk about. But yeah, is the best word for the idea of like, we're all playing along, right? And that does come up, especially with kids. There's something I definitely say that now I can't think of. It's not heat. But
juice.
the juice. No. Work. Working, right? The idea of working, because working in wrestling has a multiple meaning. There's like working in the ring is the wrestling. Wrestlers are called workers because they are doing that work. But a work is when you are pulling one over on someone, when you're acting out a thing for the benefit of the story or the benefit of your character. And the other person is not supposed to know that it's
a work.
Oh, either isn't supposed to know it's a work, or they're supposed to play along or whatever. But like there'll be opportunities in real life where it's like, this person's totally trying to work me, right? And like people know what that means, but like I have a very specific like wrestling meaning when I say that. Or that's a rib. That's a wrestling reference where like a practical joke. And I'll refer to something as a rib, or like this person's ribbing me or something like that. Just because, again, it's the best way to capture that for my brain. Yeah, so like that kind of stuff. If I was a wrestling fan and not making a wrestling game, I don't know how much of that would just be in my brain all the time. But since I made a wrestling game and like really thought about all these pieces of language, now they're just like in my bones.
There's a thing that happens to me with I start to get opinionated, right? I was always a fan of sword and sorcery, and then when I set about to do swords, I was like, okay, let's revisit the ones that I read when I was in high school. Let's get back into it. Let's undo all the damage that college did. They're trying to convince me that, should write lit fic. That's the only type of fiction that I doubt colleges are doing that anymore. Like, I think they realize that the money's elsewhere. But the point is, I started diving back into sword and sorcery, and I started reading, more and more of it. And that got me so dissatisfied with like a lot of things that have come out, since then. I think maybe a clearer picture of this is Robin Hood. Oh, sure. I've now read so many old Robin Hood stuff. So many more recent Robin experiences or whatever, and like whenever there's like a new Robin Hood movie coming out, I'm like, I am so uninterested in this. This is not my take on Robin. And usually when it first comes out, everyone's like, Epi loves Robin Hood. Here it is. And I'm like,
right.
I love Robin Hood. That's why I'm not going to watch this. This is me being skirting my oath to myself not to be critical of other people's creative works. Not to be, publicly critical. Certainly be critical in private and to myself. Otherwise, how do I advance? Like, I mean, like, how do I, look at a thing and be like, I want to do something different? Whew. The second part of this problem, are there things in life that a study of games has made easier to understand or share? And there's like a little story here where years ago, because of our mutual love of games and study of games, I started a podcast with a friend of mine about the Rockford Files.
I was just about to say this.
Yes.
Carry on.
No, I was just like, when we started that, we were definitely... partially because our audience was games and we were just trying to appeal to get the people what they want.
Right.
But also partially because this is how we engage with media. Like this was, so we were looking at the Rockford Files, which have a lot of really good lessons to learn about how to craft story and how to make things interesting. And we were like mining that for, I think the way we word it is like, things that you might be playing at the table or anything you might be writing or
lessons you can learn for your like creative narrative pursuits. Yeah.
And that worked out for us.
Yeah, that worked out great. So it's not really a joke, but the joke there is that was our original frame and we did that, but then after about 10 or 12 episodes we were like, this is an episodic show. Most of the structural things in here are in most of the episodes. So, at a certain point, we're kind of like, all right, so we're not like learning new lessons every single time we're watching the show.
Yeah, and we're seeing the craft done well. Right.
So we're like, so we transitioned into being more of, just big fans of the show. But I think we always did have, because our approach as engaged viewers, right, was always... what's the story, like how is the story working, and how are the elements of the television how are the elements of a televised show used to build the story. And some of those are formal, like the script and the camera shots and stuff like that, and then some of them are like emergent chemistry of the actors, environments that they're shooting in. This is a total aside, but I've been thinking about maybe something we could do for our annual Memorial 200 a Day episode is revisit some of the bicentennial episodes, because I'm starting to see, because now it's the whatever, I forget what the
250th,
but
50 years on.
It's 50 years on, but I'm starting to see some of that like swag, like people have like flags and stuff, and some of that is tied up with our horrible president. But but there's this in 1976, a lot of the ephemera in the Rockford Files was bicentennial stuff. like the phone that one guy had, and
Yes.
stuff like that. That was just, it was fun to clock, and that just might be a hook for like revisiting some of those episodes
that'd be
and
fun.
kind of compare and contrast. Anyway, back to this show.
Well, I will say, like, so to actually make this a more, I guess, a broader point is that, like, learning and designing games and learning to design games and think about games critically has allowed me to enjoy media in ways that I didn't before, right? Like I'm watching something. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Like it's that little thing about like you can't play games anymore without tearing them apart. Like not tearing them apart, but dissecting them, trying to figure out. You can't just enjoy a game or whatever that means. But on the other hand, you could really enjoy a game. Like you could really get in there. And the same with like movies and TVs and books. Like every time I'm engaging with one, I'm like, my brain is like, what does the game for this look like? What, or not even like the game that makes this, like what game can be inspired by this, or how does this fit? How would you emulate this genre?
Yeah, I sometimes try to find, or it occurs to me and I'm like, oh, cool. Like the ways in which something doesn't feel like it's really gameable, right? Because there's like, different media is different. They do different things, and there's some things that some media does that games cannot do, and things that games do that other media cannot do. And for me, I guess there can be a moment where I'm like, oh, okay, I know this is the good stuff because it's doing something where I'm like, oh, okay, this has to be like a lot of, I don't know, like classic Westerns, like playing a Western TTRPG is one thing, and watching like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is another thing. They don't feel the same to me because there's something about the space in those movies that is just like, I feel like this is part of my quest with the sailing game, where there's like something about like space, like physical space, that I'm like, is it even possible to capture this in a game? How
do I convert cinematography to a game?
Right. Like, yeah. It's like that kind of stuff where, there's the easy thing, or not easy, but like there's the path of least resistance, which is describe things like it's a movie, which is fine. Right. But that's not incorporating that difference into the game. This is just going off down a path, but
okay. So I think I was working on this just before the pandemic. It's called It Lives, It Wakes. It's my Godzilla game.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it uses Jenga. Surprise for the audience. Because you want to knock buildings down, right? Like it's a Godzilla game. But the main thing that's happening is you have like these deck of cards, not playing cards, but like cards with, in the prototype, they're note cards with things written on them. But like you have to incorporate these things. This is nothing new. This is Bullwinkle and Rocky. This is like, this goes all the way back. But a lot of the stuff that you have to incorporate are things like camera angles and soundtrack stuff, which does go a long way for, like, describing a beautiful... This is not necessarily a solution for the sailing game, right? Because the sailing game is not a movie about sailing. It's sailing, right? Those are separate things. But, like, trying to get cinematography into it, and you just say, this scene has to be in a Dutch angle. Now you have to look up what a Dutch angle is. And now you have to, like, envision the scene from that and describe it. That helps get people to this point of, like, oh, yes, we're all thinking about it in this sweeping, this is a drone shot of a bunch of people walking along a ridge of a mountain in New Zealand where music swells in the background. And you're like, oh, we're going to Lord of the Rings this. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
I think something a little more like, not just in media, but something a study of games has made easier to understand or share in life. Just the idea of motivations and rewards, I think, has been something that I think about a lot. And it's not like, how do we gamify this interaction? But it's more like, someone in my life is facing some kind of choice, and they're talking to me about, here's what's in front of me. These are the options that I see right now. I don't really know which I should do. And it's all in this context of like, I need to make a decision, right? I'm thinking of a specific conversation, abstracting it for reasons. But kind of going through and being like, okay, so, here are your options. option A, here's where you're at now, and here's what we can reasonably expect to happen if you go down that path. Here are the incentives that I see for different people to maybe make some different decisions down that path. Then we look at situation B. Here's where you are. Here's where we kind of see this coming out at the end. And because there's, I don't know, different people involved, or they're in a different place, they have different sets of incentives or different things we can assume that they care about, right? And kind of breaking things down that way can bring a lot of clarity to like what's the best case and worst case scenario out of each of these options. So, there's a little game theory, right? Yeah. Like if you roll high over here, here's the best case. And if you roll low, here's the worst case. And same over here. And sometimes you look at it and you go, okay, they have the same upper bound, right? They have the same possibility of things going well. And the floor on this option is way below the floor on this option.
Yeah.
So that would tell me that you probably want to go with that first option that has the narrower range because there's no downside. Like the worst case is that it's better than the other worst case. Or the worst case is that you get the worst case here and the best case in the other one. But that seems unlikely because, they probably aren't going to both go down the same way because here are the resources that are involved, here are the incentives that people have, etc. I'm sorry, I know this is a little abstract, but like that idea of being like...
Yeah, thinking it through and
kind of like classic like gaming it out and just being like, what are the variables that are going in? What do we know? What do we not know? What's the best case? What's the worst case? And always keeping in mind, like, and anything can happen, right? There's always that like wild card of like, because sometimes it's like, okay, ceiling's up here, floor's way down here. This other one, ceiling and floor are very close together. I don't know, maybe you roll the dice because the best case on the riskier thing is way better than the best case on the less risky thing. And like that's a way to make decisions.
I've had this thing happen, right? Where it's sort of along the same lines. If somebody presents me with a game like a rewards program, like at a grocery store or something like that, or like do this and you'll get points and the points will eventually turn into this or whatever. Those I'll see and I'll be like, not worth it. They're never worth it. The short-term stuff in it obviously looks like, I can get like really crappy plastic glassware or something like that for free. Yay. And then what I'm really doing is, and like the end game of these is coming, which is they're going to have prices change based on who you are. And they're just going to know where they can pigeonhole you and extract the most out of you. This is Revolutionary Epi. They're out to get you with those games. There's nothing that they're doing with those that is for your benefit at all, ever. Doesn't matter. My mom hates hearing that because she really wants me to sign up for like extra miles, like rewards programs for like airlines or whatever. And I'm like, it's not going to help you. Anyways, on the other hand, when I play a game like, I don't know if you're familiar with Flip 7. It's kind of a newer card game. It's a press your luck card game. I know that it's a press your luck card game. I could look at it. I can kind of work out the odds, do a little card counting. And I know like, I shouldn't really continue because I'm going to lose or whatever. But I also know that the fun of the game is pressing your luck.
Right. Yeah.
So I just do it.
Yeah.
There's this weird like dichotomy here of like doing doing all the math and figuring it out and be like, this is a losing proposition, I'm not going to do it. And then doing all the math and figuring out and saying, this is a losing proposition, I'm going for it. It just because the context here is it's fun. Right. And the context here is like, I get plastic glasses or
in terms of just like something that I think has improved my life over time. Just having that. And this is more just like playing role-playing games thing. It's not necessarily a design thing, but I think they come together, right? Is just this kind of willingness to be like, all right, cool, let's go for it. I'm ready to engage with this in the way that you are trying to get me to engage. And that can be like, whatever, a work, like back when I had a real job, like a work conference, or doing something with my kid where there's an interaction that they want me to have. I'm like, okay, we can do that. Like, I'm not going to be, even if it's something I don't particularly intrinsically enjoy, I can be like, all right, let's do it. Like, let's play. Like, I can pretend, I have that ability. And in some circumstances, where I feel like, am I weird? Like some, like some kind of like a presentation where there's some kind of like Q&A or something like that, or some kind of audience participation thing where I'm like, okay, I know that this is part of the deal, so I'm going to think of something so that I can participate. The same way that I'm like, okay, I'm playing this character. I'm going to think of a way my character can get into the scene. Like, how can I productively be part of play? I'm like, how can I productively be part of this conversation? And then that part comes, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready. I have a thing. But I don't want to step on it. Like if anyone is like dying to get in a question or something, like I don't need to be that person. I can let other people do their thing. And it's just silent. And I'm like, I have something. Am I the only person that was thinking about this? Like,
right. Yes.
Like, isn't everyone sitting there going like, okay, what should I say when I am supposed to bring something to the table? I think that is unusual. Like, I think that is something a gamer social thing that I've started noticing is not everywhere because I have to interact with more normal people these days. So anyway, I think that's good. Like, I feel like it means that I end up being the one who gets the most out of certain things because I participate, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I was just thinking, maybe we can end on this, but I realized that there's another feedback loop in there because because of games, that's how we started the Rockford Files with 200 Today, our Rockford Files podcast. And during that time, especially in the early days, but throughout, one of the things that the Rockford Files does so well is make side characters, incidental characters, appear rich and vibrant and living a life separate from the show you're watching. They got a thing going on. They don't have to tell you it right off the bat. You can figure it out. It just feels, a lot of people, they just feel real, even if they're like comedically done. And, we analyze that down to the business, right? This is the stuff that they're doing, their business. And we've brought that through and put that all throughout our annual, put it throughout our next annual. Like, it's permanently a way I think about games now. I go to run a game and I write up some characters, I put some business down. Yeah. I give them business. Like, even if I don't do the business in it, I at least thought about them and what their business might be, and that makes them more interesting characters to me. Like, I'm more likely to invest in having this NPC do interesting things. And NPC, another standard. People know what that means. Everywhere, people knows what that means.
That one has a dark, like that has turned into that's a thing outside of games, but has a very specific
little narcissistic thing going on where other people don't exist. Only I do. I'm the PC, everyone else is the NPC.
Not to end on that down note, I have one final thing that I think is a good way to wrap this up, which is something that I think a study of games has made it easier to do is work with another game designer to start a company.
Yes.
Our whole wind up to getting Unwritten Earths started was a lot of game design.
Yeah.
What we're looking for, how the structure is going to work, and what our agreement is.
Yeah, to be very specific for our audience here, what Nathan's talking about is not just the decades long friendship that we have, but like literally last year when we were like, we're going to make a game company together, we game designed the hell out of it. Like that's what we did because that's what we knew, and so far it's working. Yeah,
there's some playtesting involved. It's a constant beta, right? Like it's a constant playtest where we get to change things as we learn how they work once we have some experience with them. But even just like writing our contract, that is the underlies the company, the LLC. That was something that I think if we were not game designers, we would not have done it the way that we did, and it would not be as robust as it is. And it has been a helpful thing for us to be a fallback for those times where something came up and we're like, I don't know, did we talk about this? And it turns out, even if we hadn't talked about it, we had a theory of the game, right? Like a theory of the action. Like what
something
do we want?
Can fall back to, or
we can derive what we want to happen from all the things we said about other things. In the same way that you come up with something in a game and you're like, oh, there's no rules for riding horses. And it's like, well, because there's rules for riding flying animals, and, and this is a world where theoretically there are no horses, but our game ended up with horses. I mean,
what is a horse other than a wingless winged horse?
Right. A wingless Pegasus.
Yes.
That's a very direct, but yeah, the game can give you a direction and say like, oh, there's rules for this and this. So you can interpolate what the best way to go with the unspoken thing is. And like, that also is true of this business, not the wrestling thing, this business. And I think that's been good. So good job, us.
Yay, us.
Yay, us. As we like to say, go us.
Speaking of go us.
Very good. You are on top of it today, despite your head wound.
Yes.
More about that and plus expenses.
Yes.
Thank you to our scholars, as always, for the questions and comments. We anticipated just kind of having a talk for this episode, so I hope we kind of hit the high points of those questions that we stated earlier. And if not, feel free to yell at us on Discord. Feel free to leave a kind response about it on Discord. You do not need to be in the Discord to give us feedback. You can email us at provost@unwrittenearths.com. Find us on Blue Sky. All of our links are over at unwrittenearths.com. But if you do want to come to the Discord, that link is there as well. You do not need to be a listener to be in the Discord. You do not need to be in the Discord to listen. We do have a Patreon, which we really appreciate all of our scholars over there that keep us going in a sustainable fashion, and who will shortly be receiving some early. I think we're going to start sharing some of the Swords Without Master, like things that are almost done, that we are going to be sharing with Kickstarter. We'll also start sharing with our patrons over there. So we have that to look forward to. I know I'm looking forward to those. But yeah, as stated, the Unwritten Earths Symposium podcast is by us, go us. Our music is by Will Yobst. Thank you, Will. And we're getting back to it after a couple of weeks off, but looking forward to a big podcast summer. So we will see how it goes. As we get into that, Epi, have we made a game yet?
No, we are living the life we need to live in order to make a game.
Very good.